Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss The Adjustment Bureau, starring Matt Damon, Emily Blunt, Terrence Stamp, Anthony Mackie, John Slattery, Michael Kelly, and Anthony Ruvivar. I don't know if I'm saying that right, please forgive me. And directed by George Nolfi. Now, this is this director's first movie, and I have seen it in before, and what do I think of it? Well, it's about to be the same as when I'm about to think of it now. Let's get into the movie and you'll see what I mean. We open with New York wannabe election senator David Norris, who is having trouble with the election as he's losing the senator position in New York after being exposed on a college prank video going viral as it's on the TV. Meanwhile, men in suits led by Richardson, played by John Slattery, and with him is Harry Mitchell, played by Anthony Mackie, is about to control David's life until in the men's bathroom, David meets Elise Sullis, played by Emily Blunt, while crashing a wedding, and their chemistry is terrible, like Nicolas Cage and Jessica Biel's in Next, and Ben Affleck and Uma Thurman's in Paycheck. And the scene where they chat in the bathroom is very badly shot as they kiss early on, and they find each other again later in the film as his campaign manager Charlie Trainer, played by Michael Kelly, comes in as she gets chased out by security, and David makes his final speech as he lost the campaign, which was an embarrassing speech to me. He had on the stage. Next day in New York, Harry tries to follow David until he falls asleep on the job, and as David gets on the bus, as we learn, David is retired from politics, and while on the bus, he sees Elise. While Harry goes after the bus and gets hit by a taxi cab, and David and Elise finally know each other's names, and she gives him her number, and the scenes come off rather odd to me, as this is a very odd movie at best. David comes in when the men in suits freeze everyone to go after David, and as they can go through doors from one room to the next, and as a trick is rather nifty, and Richardson gets David to the bureau, and David wakes up, and the bureau tells David to never to talk or see Elise ever again. And this is a forbidden romance movie, or is this a forbidden romance movie or a science fiction movie involving a romance? Because none of them are working as both as a romance or a science fiction movie, which is a real problem with the script. And the story by Philip K. Dick in general is as Richardson burns the number Elise wrote specifically for David and won't see her in another 3 years. And David gets unfocused in a meeting like this movie is very unfocused. David meets Harry at a bar and they talk about authorization from the chairman, they call him, and David meets with Harry on a boat and they talk more about the bureau, and he tells every single trick the bureau can't hear as he tells him at the water. He'll never see her again. And are these characters interesting? Not really. And this is a plot good by any means? No, and it's all thanks to the lack of vision by this director, George Nolfi. Which, again, this is his first time directing a movie, I'll say. David is on the bus one day, 3 years later. He's on the bus and sees Elise and walks with her and talks as Richardson finds out and wants to stop them from falling in love, as Richardson acts very rude to Harry, and Harry hates his job as a bureau man. And do I get why? Not really. They go to a restaurant and get interrupted by Charlie, and he makes an announcement to run for Senate once again, and he wants to go to Pier 17 so he can see her again rehearse in a dance, like, Broadway show, let's say. And he won't give up on Elise, as Richardson comes off rather like a jerk about it. And in this whole movie, although John Slattery does a good job pulling off a hard ass, the bureau do that trick with the door in order to get to David as he watches Elise rehearse the dance. And the chase scene between David and the bureau was rather distracting, with how the shots were going from one place to the next. And when he gets to Elise, and the plan is they will eventually break up later in the film, which will be kind of a stupid idea for an odd movie. David and Elise have their romance, and they go to a club, and after they leave the club, they kiss again, and Matt Damon does have charisma, but not in this movie. And Emily Blunt, I always thought of her as a feisty presence since I first saw her in The Devil Wears Prada back in 2006, when it was in theaters, as she is a great actress, but here, her character kind of bugged me, I'm not gonna lie. Elise gets a call the next morning by her ex-boyfriend named Adrian, who's a great choreographer, as they were engaged and they broke it off because of David, but he didn't know until they talk about it, which is a terribly acted scene. David goes on the Daily Show with Jon Stewart, and she gets told by a person on the show that he's going to a meeting, and David is led to the bureau and meets Thompson, played by a very good actor, Terrence Stamp, as he tells David he has no free will, as meaning Elise was chance, and Thompson tells him to break it off after she breaks the leg on a dancing show. And I love Terrence Stamp as a commanding presence, but his character is also kind of jerky. David makes it in time for the show where she broke her leg. As she does, David goes after her and brings her to the hospital. And after a brief talk with Thompson, he leaves Elise as a part of their future, which is when the movie begins to really fall apart. And 11 months later, David campaigns for the Senate again, and Elise is getting married to Elise is getting married to, what's his name again? Adrian once again. And why the hell are they repeating things over and over again? Is that, as to me, that was a questionable decision by the director. Harry assumes David is going to the bar where they met earlier in the film and tells David Thompson was lying about the future and things happen by chance, while David goes up by 16 points as Harry teaches David about the door trick after he can't stop thinking about her, as the rain covers them, while Harry is teaching David how to turn the door clockwise. And again, the trick is nifty. Harry gives David the hat to the bureau to go door to door, and the next day comes, and the wedding is about to happen in a courtroom in front of the judge until David comes into the girls' bathroom and explains to Elise about the bureau's plan for them, as the bureau goes after them, and the nifty trick with the doors is starting to give me a headache, and Elise doesn't understand what's happening, but goes with David to meet with the chairman of the bureau with Elise, and before they erase their memories, they kiss, as Thompson tells them it doesn't work like the way they want to, until Harry gives Thompson the message to leave them alone forever, which is totally unrealistic, as both the chairman and Harry were inspired by David and Elise as a couple, and the score during that moment was awfully constructed, and the climax was very unrealistic and dreadful. It made it into a dreadful film. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 3.8 out of 10. The acting, the shots, and this entire plot is terrible, as all the actors were pretty bad in here, and these are actors I really like in other movies, but they don't have characters in this movie. The shots look terrible, as it was moving from one camera to another, as it was giving quite a painful headache, as this entire score and climax was really dreadful, as well as this whole movie. The plot was horrendous, as it makes these characters have no chemistry, and honestly, it was a very odd movie and a dreadful piece of work from a director I've never personally saw working again, and I don't think I'll ever see him work again after this movie. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with the remake of Total Recall. And until next time, get your ass to Mars.